poof, and suddenly, boom, I got a face full of gas. And then the pilot light jumped and my face caught on fire.
The world knew him as the king of late night, the ultimate car enthusiast, ruling over millions of fans and late-night television for decades, a life lived at full throttle, and on his own terms he was the man who faced death, not once but twice, and danced on its knife's edge, still kept going, steady and unstoppable. Yet now, after a tragic diagnosis, Jay is saying goodbye. If staring death in the face couldn't stop him, what could?
It's okay. It's okay. It's basically what we did before, except now I have to feed her and do all those things. But I like it. I like taking care of her.
The man behind the smile. The name Jay Leno echoed through history as one of the most tireless voices in American entertainment. A man whose laughter seemed endless, whose engines never cooled, and whose smile could light up late-night television for decades. When observing his life today, it is filled with powerful engines, gleaming automobiles, and the level of success that most comedians only aspire to attain. But from the very beginning, he carried within him something less polished, a spark that refused to sit still, a restlessness that no classroom could contain. A kid in Andover, Massachusetts, long before The Tonight Show and the million-dollar contracts, transformed mischief into an art form. Jay Leno was unable to contain himself. Jokes poured forth from him like a high-powered engine, unrestrained and relentless. His fifth-grade teacher, exhausted and perhaps amused, wrote a note on his report card that now reads like prophecy. If Jay spent as much time studying as he does trying to be a comedian, he'd be a big star. That assessment turned out to be the perfect prophecy for his future. This early drive to entertain, to make the room bend to his timing, was a signal of the fierce focus that would define his professional life. He didn't start studying more. He just doubled down on the comedy. By the time he reached Emerson College in Boston, Jay had already turned humor into a second language. He earned a degree in speech therapy in 1973. But his true classroom was the dimly lit comedy clubs of the city. In addition to his studies, he performed stand-up routines, emceed talent shows for extra money, and learned to read a crowd with precision. It was there he developed a revolutionary approach to working small rooms. He would put $50 on the bar at Hootenanny Night and tell the bartender, "Let me go up and tell jokes if I do good. Give me my $50 back. If I do bad, you keep the $50. Eventually, this discipline allowed him to make $15 to $20 a night. Jay was pursuing laughter, the kind that paid in applause, not guarantees, while his classmates planned careers in offices and hospitals. After graduation, he packed up for Los Angeles with a suitcase full of jokes and just enough ambition to power a jet. He found work writing for Good Times, but spent most nights hustling on stage, trying to make strangers laugh before last call. Then, in 1977, came his first big moment, an appearance on The Tonight Show. America truly took notice of him, an ordinary individual with a warm, approachable demeanor and a superb sense of humor that captured the attention of all. This early success didn't slow him down. It only pushed him to work harder and take every opportunity seriously, laying the groundwork for the grueling pace that would define his career. By the mid-1980s, Leno had become one of the busiest men in comedy. He booked over 300 shows annually, hopping from club to club and city to city, seemingly fearful that any slowdown could potentially disrupt his captivating charm. He wasn't flashy, and he wasn't controversial. He was consistent, a rare and underrated trait in a business built on chaos. His humor was clean and clever, moving fast enough to keep audiences laughing without ever needing cheap shots or shock value. Even his face, with its famously prominent chin, became part of the act. something he later embraced in the title of his autobiography, Leading with My Chin-Growing Recognition and a Steady Rise in Comedy paved the way for bigger opportunities, demonstrating Leno's readiness for the late-night spotlight. In 1987, NBC signed him as one of The Tonight Show's permanent guest hosts, sharing the stage with legends. For Jay, it was both validation and warning, proof he'd made it, but also a reminder that the real test had just begun. When Johnny Carson announced his retirement in 1992, the nation speculated that David Letterman, Carson's natural heir, would take the throne. However, NBC had a different plan, opting for the reliable and stable choice of Jay Leno. This decision significantly disrupted the late-night television industry. Critics pounced, fans divided, and Leno's world turned into a war zone. His longtime manager, Helen Kushnick, was accused of threatening guests who dared to appear on rival shows. The headlines were brutal. When the polished comedian was abruptly portrayed as the antagonist of late night, it was irony in action. When Kushnick was fired, Leno didn't retaliate or dramatize. He did what he'd always done. He showed up. Night after night, he worked the jokes, polished the rhythm, and earned back the crowd. Slowly, the tide turned. In 1993, NBC extended his contract for $40 million. 2 years later, he was holding an Emmy Award, smiling like a man who'd outrun every rumor. Despite the arrival of recognition and fame, he maintained his daily routine, approaching every opportunity with the same focus and discipline that had shaped his career. From its inception, fame didn't change his rhythm. It just gave him better tools. He married Mavis Nicholson in 1980, a quiet, thoughtful woman who kept his world grounded. And together, they built a life away from Hollywood's chaos, living quietly with loyalty, steady routines, and a shared love for a simple, grounded life. While others spent fortunes on designer suits and Malibu mansions, Jay invested in engines. His garage in Los Angeles became a sanctuary, a cathedral of steel and oil. Hundreds of classic cars and motorcycles lined the floor, from vintage Bro Superiors to roaring muscle cars, each one polished like memory itself. "I never set out to collect cars," he once said. "I just bought what I liked." Yet his collection grew to 181 cars and about 160 motorcycles, a mechanical museum fueled by obsession and craftsmanship. "It should be of technical and historical significance," he explained. "It should be fun to drive, and it should be beautiful to look at." Those were his 3 commandments, and while the world saw a millionaire surrounded by machines, Jay still thought like the broke college comic who bet $50 on his first open mic night. "I work and my money relaxes," he said. "That's the way I look at it." He lived on his stand-up income, never touching his Tonight Show salary. "TV money is fleeting money," he would joke. But as a comedian, you can always make a living. You can always stand somewhere and tell jokes. There's irony in that, too. The richest man in comedy is living like someone one bad gig away from breaking. But that was the point. "My mother used to say, 'You're going to have to work twice as hard as everyone else,'" he recalled. And that always seemed fair. Even dyslexia couldn't slow him down. It just made him focus harder. He called low self-esteem a great motivator, quipping that the only people with high self-esteem are actors and criminals. He wasn't joking, or maybe he was, just enough to hide the truth in humor. That mindset carried him through decades of highs and lows, preparing him for moments when the spotlight would shift and chaos would strike. Moments where staying calm and steady mattered more than ever. In 2009, when The Jay Leno Show failed in prime time and NBC's late-night schedule fell into chaos, Jay stepped into steady things. Once again, Conan O'Brien refused to change time slots, so NBC put The Tonight Show back in Leno's hands. News outlets reacted strongly, and critics complained, but Jay stayed calm. There were no scandals, no drama, just him performing another opening monologue. By 2012, as NBC faced layoffs, Jay voluntarily took a pay cut to protect his staff, an act that said more than any punchline could. He wasn't just America's comedian. He was the boss who looked out for his people. And through it all, the rivalries, the ratings wars, the long nights, he never stopped working. When The Tonight Show finally ended in 2014, Jay didn't retire. He simply changed gears. Jay Leno's Garage, first a humble web series, became a hit on CNBC, blending his two lifelong passions, laughter and machinery. Looking at him now, it's easy to mistake the calm for ease. But beneath that smile is an engine that never truly idles. From the boy who wrecked tractors to the man who ruled late night, Jay Leno lived like every minute might be his last chance to prove himself. For Jay, work was more than just money. It was a way of staying in motion. But motion, as he would soon learn, can only keep up with fate for so long. Even legends built of steel have their breaking point, and Jay's came in the unlikeliest way. The accidents that changed everything. Jay Leno had always believed that work was survival. His huge net worth, his long marriage, and his famous jaw were all symbols of his stability. Yet, in less than 2 months, fate delivered not one, but 2 brutal warnings. His problems started in November 2022, when his usually safe garage full of cars and motorcycles suddenly became dangerous. It was November 12th, and the day started like any other for the host of CNBC's Jay Leno's Garage. He and his longtime friend Dave Kilacki were working inside his massive 140,000-square-foot Burbank garage. They were focused on an ancient machine, a 1907 white steam car. These cars were complicated machines. They used gasoline to heat a pilot light, which in turn warmed a vaporizer to turn water into steam cars. Leno explained, were dangerous by nature. Gasoline fueled the system. The pilot light kept the vaporizer hot, and one wrong move could turn curiosity into disaster. One push too hard, one stray puff of air into a clogged fuel line, and gasoline sprayed across Leno's face. "I got a face full of gasoline," he recalled, his voice calm, as if narrating a tale of someone else. "I knew how close I was to the pilot light, and I thought, uh-oh." In an instant, gasoline ignited upon contact with the spark. The flames instantly erupted. The fire devoured the air around him, licking his skin with invisible tongues. Leno felt his face on fire, every nerve screaming in protest. "Maybe like the most intense sunburn you've ever had," he said, summoning a humor that masked the terror of a split second. He shut his eyes, held his breath, and struggled to escape from under the car. 10 seconds stretched like a lifetime before Kilacki pulled him free, snuffing out the flames that danced so close to his eyes. Paramedics arrived within minutes. He was checked into the Grossman Center the next day. His surgeon, Dr. Peter Grossman, noted that Jay's burns were deeper than they first looked. The man who had survived a late-night TV war now had to endure a medical one. At the center, he underwent 2 skin grafting surgeries. The surgeons used human cadaver skin and later pig intestine to help grow new, healthy skin. He also had sessions in hyperbaric chambers to help oxygenate his tissue. Dr. Grossman later said that Jay was definitely an outlier in terms of how well he's healed. Most people would have spent months recovering. Most people would have been broken by the sight of their injured face. However, Jay Leno was different from most people. Just 6 days after he left the center, the engine started again. Jay was back on stage performing stand-up at the Comedy and Magic Club in Hermosa Beach, California. It was a defiant act of work over rest. He even joked about the whole thing, saying the accident, "It kind of gave my career a shot in the arm because it's like, let's go see him before he burns up again." The garage called him back soon after flames may have scarred his skin, but they could not scorch his relentless drive. The fire was a close call, but it was only the beginning of the challenges that fate had in store a short time later. Fate presented another test, a motorcycle accident. While testing a 1940 model, he detected the scent of leaking gas. This choice was a cruel joke of fortune. Turning down a side street, he cut through a parking lot. A wire, strung like a silent trap, waited for him. "I didn't see it until it was too late," Leno said. The crash fractured his collarbone, broke 2 ribs, and cracked his kneecaps. 9 days in the hospital followed. Despite the pain and recovery, Leno's resolve remained unshaken. A reminder that the body can heal even when the soul refuses to rest, the fire had demanded extensive facial reconstruction. Pig intestine served as artificial skin. His ear was rebuilt. "I got a new face and a new ear," he told CNN's Chris Wallace. "Ears, when they catch fire, there's no bone to protect them. They're as fragile as paper, so they make you a new one." The motorcycle crash required another visit to his face guy, who repaired the remaining damage. "If I had been 50 or 60, I would have been decapitated," he said. Luck, timing, and decades of awareness had saved him once again. Despite the back-to-back disasters, Jay refused to complain. He made an observation that defined his career. "Look, when you're in my position, when you're any kind of celebrity, you're luckier than most people. So when something bad happens to you, you can't whine and complain about it because bad things happen to people every day, and they don't have the financial wherewithal I did." Jay declared that he planned to stay busy as long as possible, appearing as a judge on NBC's Hot Wheels, Ultimate Challenge and touring, stating the only thing that would truly stop him would be a stroke. "Then you slow down. That's when you retire. When you have your stroke," he said. Even with that determination, the accidents had left their mark in ways the public couldn't fully see. There were many rumors and speculations swirling around, suggesting that the accidents had altered Jay's trajectory and finally paused the rhythm of the unstoppable host. Steel had flattened him as he stared into flames, yet he rose once more. But beneath the surface, deeper than skin and bone, something lingered, something unseen, a threat not measured by burns or broken bones. 2 life-threatening incidents occurred consecutively. Many believed this explained his sudden shift, that the physical toll had finally demanded attention. Yet the real reason, the diagnosis, remained hidden and far more devastating than any blaze or collision. The diagnosis. The comedian who had always joked about working until he had a stroke suddenly found his ringing true. He had survived fires and crashes, but the biggest danger came quietly, inside his own body. Jay suffered a stroke one night, prompting a rush from the studio to a nearby hospital. That scary night made him stop and think about his health. It turned out that the endless worker, the man who knew everything about the delicate engines of old cars, had a serious flaw in his own engine. Jay was diagnosed with high cholesterol, and a scan revealed a blockage right in his heart. Unlike the fire and the motorcycle crash, which had been loud, flaming, and visible, this danger was silent. According to the Mayo Clinic, while the body needs cholesterol to build cells, having too much of it makes it difficult for blood to flow through vessels. This boosted the odds of him having a heart attack. It also raised the chances of having another stroke, which claims about 140,000 Americans each year. Unlike burns or broken bones, this threat built up slowly, hidden in plain sight, connecting the past dangers he had faced to a far more subtle risk. The effects of having high cholesterol often did not appear until it was too late. Speaking from his famous garage in Burbank, California, surrounded by his vintage Bro Superior motorcycles, Jay compared his health to a natural disaster. High cholesterol was like an earthquake. It might not destroy the house, but it certainly weakens the structure. He knew many people were walking around just like him. They were time bombs. Jay explained the danger using a perfect car metaphor. It's like in a car. If even one speck of dirt gets into the eye of the needle of the jet, then boom, no more gas comes through. And that's exactly what happens with your heart. Tiny particles of fat were disrupting the natural flow of life. To keep his engine running smoothly, Jay started a repair plan. He medicated and used a portable electrocardiogram device, also known as an EKG, that monitored his heart rhythm and detected irregular heartbeats. He hooked the heart monitoring device up to his iPhone, turning a health crisis into a high-tech project. He made some big changes to his fuel intake. He stayed away from alcohol and cigarettes, saying, "None of that." He cut sodas down to maybe 1 or 2 sodas a week. Yet, he admitted he wasn't perfect. He loved a good steak and Italian food and confessed he had enjoyed steak and ice cream the night before his low-density lipoprotein cholesterol. The bad side was still a little high. Even with adjustments, his heart still reminded him that past habits and relentless work left traces that couldn't be erased overnight. "I'm not one of those guys," he said, speaking to those who lived like him. "I don't run 5 miles a day and do all that kind of stuff." He hoped to appeal to the majority of people who would like to do more, but not if it sounds like kind of a pain. He stressed the solution was simple. You go to the doctor, it's a quick visit, and he can tell you what you need to do. Despite the terrifying diagnosis and the need for rest, Jay's legendary work habit never broke. The man who had faced the fire and the clothesline could not stop working. In Hollywood, the day after the Oscars was an unofficial holiday, a day everyone took to recover. But that day found Jay Leno working in his garage. He simply didn't take vacations. "I like feeling like if I don't work this week, I'm gonna go broke," he once said. Even as a millionaire, even with fame, fortune, and decades of success, his rhythm didn't change. The garage called louder than any holiday or red carpet. Decades into his comedy career, even after turning 74, he still loved small comedy clubs the most. In 2024, he performed about 150 tour dates. He planned to continue that high volume through 2025. He preferred the continuous work of stand-up to one big event, explaining that he liked to tell jokes 100 times and get a bunch of smaller checks, instead of doing a Netflix special and getting one big check. For him, constant movement was more fun. The stage and the road kept him alive, a rhythm that no calendar, holiday, or applause could ever interrupt. His sleep reflected his pace. He slept about 4 hours each night. He generally went to bed around 2 or 2:30 a.m. and woke up between 7:30 or 8 a.m. "I'm just not a big sleeper," he added, believing if he had a real job where I had to work hard, he'd be more exhausted. The great irony was complete. The man whose body was a ticking time bomb simply pushed the pace harder, refusing to retire or slow down. The world still saw the unstoppable host, but behind the garage doors and stage lights, a different kind of challenge was quietly reshaping his life. And with that, the stage was set for a farewell no one saw coming. Even as Jay Leno, the seemingly unstoppable engine of late-night television, grappled with hidden health challenges, his career remained a whirlwind of starts and stops. Though destined for the Tonight Show desk, he found himself compelled to step away. Not once, but twice. The exit? Jay's show stayed at the top of the late-night ratings, sparking talk about what he would do when his NBC contract ended. In December 2008, it was decided he would stay with NBC and host a new 1-hour show at 10 p.m., keeping much of The Tonight Show's format and his favorite segments, while Conan O'Brien took over The Tonight Show. Jay left The Tonight Show on Friday, May 29, 2009, and Conan started 3 days later. The Jay Leno Show premiered on September 14, 2009, featuring celebrities, music guests, and the popular Headlines segments. Jay delivered what the network expected: but falling ratings and pressure from local stations whose evening news was suffering forced big changes. As weeks passed, quiet conversations behind studio doors turned into restless whispers across Hollywood. Rumors of reshuffling spread through late-night television like static before a storm. In January 2010, the tension reached its peak. Media outlets reported on January 7th that starting March 1st, 2010, Jay would move from his 10 p.m. weeknight time slot to 11:35 p.m. His show would be cut from an hour to just 30 minutes. All national broadcasting company late-night programming would also be paused for the 2010 Winter Olympics, moving The Tonight Show to 12:05 a.m. for the first time in its history. 30 Mile Zone, a production zone, reported that Conan O'Brien received no advance notice of this change. NBC, a major American television network, offered him two severe choices: the new 12:05 a.m. time slot or the option to leave the network entirely. Conan chose to walk away. On January 12th, Conan issued a public statement refusing the shift, saying, "I believe that delaying The Tonight Show into the next day to accommodate another comedy program will seriously damage what I consider to be the greatest franchise in the history of broadcasting. The Tonight Show at 12:05 simply isn't The Tonight Show." NBC struck a deal with Conan on January 21st. He left The Tonight Show and received a $33 million payout, with his staff of almost 200 people receiving $12 million in the departure. His final episode aired the next day. Jay returned as host of The Tonight Show on March 1st, 2010. The second run commenced, yet the enchantment crumbled. By July 1st, 2010, Variety, an American entertainment magazine and website, reported that total viewership for Jay's Tonight Show had dropped from 5 million to 4 million in the second quarter of 2010 compared to the same period in 2009. It was with a great amount of showbiz flair, rather than quiet sadness, that Jay prepared for his second and final exit. He brought a whole crowd of celebrities to say goodbye. The comedian used his monologue to joke about how much time had passed. 22 years ago, guys had to go to the newsstand for adult magazines. In the final minutes of the show, the comedian allowed his normally calm and steady demeanor to finally slip. He said, "Boy, this is the hard part." He remembered the milestones he'd lived through during his years on Tonight. He thanked the audience and, above all, his wife, Mavis J., became tearful and choked up, concluding what he called the greatest 22 years of my life. He said, "I am the luckiest guy in the world." This job is tricky, as he stepped down for what felt like the final time. This time, his retirement felt definitive. Jay had faced the fire, the crash, and the hidden time bomb in his heart. But the challenge that finally drew him away from the spotlight wasn't one he could fix with money or a wrench. It was a family crisis, a devastating diagnosis that would alter his world and force him to change his life completely. Leno's private family battle. The man who never stopped working understood the weight of loss long before the cameras turned on. Jay lost his mother, father, and brother Patrick, all to cancer, within roughly a decade. This hidden grief became a powerful lesson. When tragedy struck, he internalized the pain and focused on work. For 44 years, Mavis, his wife, was his rock, his home. But in 2024, the strength of that foundation was tested by a cruel, silent diagnosis. A diagnosis that required Jay Leno to step out of the spotlight and take on a new, permanent role. The crisis was one he couldn't fix with a joke. Jay Leno filed for conservatorship over his wife, Mavis Elizabeth Leno, because she suffers from dementia. The TV legend filed the petition in Los Angeles County Superior Court so he could structure her living trust and other estate plans. He wished to create a trust to hold his and Mavis's community property to ensure she had managed assets sufficient to provide for her care, in the event he should die before her. The court documents stated that Mavis had been progressively losing capacity and orientation to space and time for several years and was being treated for dementia and mood disorder. A doctor's report from November stated Mavis lacked the capacity to give informed consent to any form of medical treatment. Jay was granted conservatorship in April 2024, and Mavis's lawyer confirmed she was in agreement and receiving excellent care. Jay quickly embraced his new role. Speaking in November at the 34th annual Love Ride, the comedian opened up about taking care of Mavis, whom he married in 1980. "I've been very lucky in my life. My wife is fighting dementia and all that, but it's not cancer. It's not a tumor, so I enjoy taking care of her," he said. He insisted it wasn't work. "It's okay. It's not terrible. I'm not a woe-is-me person." He adjusted his famous non-stop touring schedule to prioritize his wife. He told people in September that even when he traveled for work, he always made sure he was home at night. He said, "I come home every day. I went to Puerto Rico for the day, and the plane waited, and I came right back." His ultimate commitment was clear. "As soon as this ride's over, I'm going home, and I'll make her lunch." Jay Leno is trading the applause of millions of fans for the solemn, loving commitment of tending to the woman who was his anchor for over 4 decades. This is his final and most profound act of devotion. What does Jay Leno's ultimate act of resilience and commitment mean to you? Has a silent tragedy affected you or a loved one? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you enjoyed this video, click on the next video on your screen.